Good morning. Welcome to Shop Talk Live. My name is Jeremy Kemp. I am the Director of Products here at Mathews Company in the grain dryer capital of the world, Crystal Lake, Illinois. And today we are shifting to a very important Shop Talk Live topic, and that is harvest. Harvest is in full swing, and I have got a panel of folks that talk and work with people in the field every day, so we'll get a broad overview of harvest conditions across the Corn Belt. Let's start with a broad overview from the USDA. What are they telling us has happened so far? If we take a look at the USDA Crop Progress Report as of this last Sunday, which was released on Monday, September 28th, what they're telling us is that about 15% of the corn harvest is already in the bins. And yes, I believe that's true based on our kind of overview or sample that we see coming from the field. And what you would expect to see is exactly what you do see. The corn harvest is starting its annual march from the south to the north. We're seeing nearly complete harvest in Texas, nearly complete in places like North Carolina. Harvest is well underway, probably over half complete in Kansas. Kentucky is well underway. So those states have been at it for a while. We've been talking to guys for a while, and we've been looking at the data that we see here at MC for some time. One of the great things about the remote monitoring and control system that we have with MC Dryers, MC Tracks, is that it's web-based, so that as an organization, we actually see dryers come online. That does a couple things for us. It would allow us to help a dealer if they were having trouble with a dryer, if they needed us to look at a particular data set, and even the PLC itself. But what it does for us when we talk about harvest is it gives us a great sample of what's happening out in the field. And what I'm seeing is this year, I'm not seeing the extreme moistures that you see some years. As a matter of fact, nearly every dryer in operation that I put eyes on is drying 10 points or less. Most years this early, I see some guys that are drying some extreme moistures for whatever reasons. They've got a situation where they get out really early, whatever their situation on site is, it forces them out into the field with 30% plus moistures. I don't think I've seen a dryer all season so far with that extreme level of moisture. I've seen a few between 25 and 30%, but most of the stuff coming out of the field is under 25%, with a lot of dryers operating, taking out 5 points or less, which is not uncommon for the southern end of the Corn Belt, which is who's been primarily running so far. However, I'll say that lack of extreme moistures is a little bit uncommon. So it looks like we're going to have a much more comfortable and faster harvest than what we saw last year, at least so far in the regions that have come online. But let's not just take it from me. Let's kick it out to the guys on the phone. I've got 3 individuals who are going to report from remote locations. I've got Bill Wood coming to us from Wisconsin, Ryan O'Neill coming to us from Ohio, and I've got Kevin Ryan, a quality service technician, that's going to talk a little bit about dryer operation, and he's typically here in Crystal Lake, Illinois, but this morning he's also helping get a dryer up and running for 2020 harvest from Wisconsin. So with that said, I'd like to start with Bill. Bill is let's start with Ryan. I apologize. Ryan is our Eastern Regional Manager. He handles dryers in the Eastern Corn Belt, and he's been out on dryer startups now for a couple of weeks. Ryan, you want to tell us what you're seeing from a farmer's perspective? Absolutely. Anything you want to share with us? Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, good morning. This is Ryan O'Neill. Like he said, I cover the east side. I cover Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio, draw a line to Florida, minus Kentucky, Tennessee, back to Maine, Ontario, and Quebec. So what I'm seeing in my region, basically, you touched on it a little bit earlier, Jeremy, is the Carolinas, Georgia, obviously Florida, which don't have a whole lot, but we do have a dryer down there. So those guys are pretty much wrapped up for the year. And as we come up to swing up the east side, Virginia is probably about half done. West Virginia is half done. And then we get into Pennsylvania, and they've just got a good start last week. So that being said, southern Indiana, we're going going to say I'm going to say they're probably about 50% done also, which Bill will probably touch on southern Illinois. Moistures, you're correct, Jeremy. The moistures are down. The stalks are still green, but the corn is actually coming off drier than anticipated. But overall, pretty dry year. There was some central Ohio had some pretty good moisture in there, in central and southern Ohio. Yields are way up down there, and but there again, they haven't really started on the corn. They're more working on their beans, which the beans, to throw that in there, are running anywhere from 15 to 9% in all my areas. So there again, the pods are still green. They're struggling to get the beans out of the green pods, which don't really entice anything other than there is some guys trying to dry some beans. So other than that, we get up into my area, which is in the northwest corner of Ohio. We experienced over 2 month time, July, there was 1.25 inches of rain. August and September, we had 0.3 of an inch of rain. So we're really dry in my area. Beans are probably 50% off. Corn is 25% off, and the wheat pretty much is in the ground at this point. Going up into Michigan, the corn harvest in the southern part of Michigan is actually underway. I'm on my way to a dryer right now, and they've been running anywhere from that 22 to 19% range in southern Michigan. Northern Michigan was blessed with rain. Up in the thumb area, up in that area, they just are now getting a good start, and they're a little wetter up there. So they're trying to dry like 28%, which is still under normal for them. Talking to my dealer in Ontario yesterday, they're just getting a good start on beans. So I don't believe the corn harvest is really underway up there a whole lot. And if there is, it's early corn, which will be like 30%. They were blessed with a lot of rain also. Quebec is they're probably a week away. So they really haven't turned the wheel much in Quebec. So I will have a report probably on that later. But all in all, it's been a good year. It's been a good growing year. Yields are it's pocketed. So yields are down in some areas, but above normal in others. So it depends where the rain had come through. Other than that, everything seems to be flowing pretty well for the harvest season, and I look for it to be a short one. So that's not a bad thing for some of us either. So that's all I've got. I thank you. And if you have any questions, give me a holler. Thanks.
Hey, thank you, Ryan. It's good to hear things are progressing very well in your territory. So let's take it a step further west. Let's take a look at the Central Corn Belt with Bill Wood. Bill, what are you seeing?
Well, good morning. Up here in Baraboo, Wisconsin, we're getting a 4,000 tower commission today and tested out. The territory in general is similar to what Ryan was saying. The southern areas are either complete or going great guns. A couple weeks back, I was in southern Illinois, and most everybody had at least started at that point, and it was still pretty dry. I know we've had some wet weather recently, and that kind of put the brakes on some of the harvesting. The beans look like they're ready to go, so everyone's just hoping for dry weather so they can get in the field and get their beans out. As we work north, the harvest is starting slow. It's the early harvesters are, of course, again this year trying to get in there early and get it out. But the moistures I'm seeing out of Iowa are still pretty, in Illinois, are still fairly reasonable. They're not hitting 30% or anything. They're more like in the 23 to 26 range. This year has been kind of an interesting year for growing. So there was quite a bit of drought that has affected the crop. Further west into Nebraska and moving east across western Iowa, northern part of Iowa, the crop was not able to completely mature before it dried out and died out. So there's a lot, pretty much everything's brown. And so guys are still waiting though for it to dry down a bit more. It seems if it doesn't mature, it doesn't dry down to harvestable moisture levels as quickly. I think that will also transfer into grain that's a little harder to dry too. It seems in past years that's been the case. So I think after a very difficult harvest last year, a lot of guys are just a little more patient this year and a little happier to just be able to get the stuff out of the field. We get into northern Wisconsin. It's a little flip-flop this year. Northern Wisconsin had a lot more areas of drought, and southern part of the state where I live is a little bit more typical year with more rain, and actually the southern part of the state is behind as far as how far the fields are along than the northern part of the state. So the northern part of the state sees almost completely brown field. The southern part of the state, southern half is half and half, or maybe a little less, but there's still plenty of corn out there that green. The dairy farmers who chop grain for corn silage are always ahead of the harvesting because they need a wetter moisture, and even they're not done yet. So there's still plenty of harvest left, but so far so good. Everyone's cautiously optimistic.
All right, that sounds good, Bill. Good to hear. The central states are also in relatively good shape. We know there's been some challenges with dryness in certain pockets, and of course we had that huge storm come through primarily Iowa, but it continued east through Illinois. I'm sure that hurt some yields. Let's keep moving west. Nick Kloos is our regional sales manager for the Western Corn Belt. He was not available for this call, so I got an update, and Nick was the right person to have on the shelf for this call because his territory is the furthest behind. So what we're seeing is a good number of dryers starting up through southern Minnesota with reasonable moistures, mostly in the low 20s. The Dakotas basically have not started yet or are just barely getting underway. If you get up into Manitoba, Alberta, there's some drying happening, but that is primarily in small grains. They're underway with some canola, but you're not seeing a lot of corn harvest. So on our next harvest update with Shop Talk Live, we'll definitely have Nick on the line as we anticipate that area coming to life over the next couple of weeks. So let's go to yet another perspective. Kevin Ryan is a quality service technician with Mathews Company, and he fields calls from dealers for support all day long during this time of year. We've got a all hands on deck approach, and Kevin's talking to people from across the entire Corn Belt. So let's hear what kind of issues folks are having and what Kevin's hearing from the field. Go ahead, Kevin.
Hello and good morning, everybody. I'm Kevin Ryan, and like Jeremy said, I kind of support on the quality services, and I take the service calls, and I should call them support calls, really, because we have just a tremendous dealer base with this company. They're very skilled, and makes taking these calls, if you can say enjoyable, I would say enjoyable. It's kind of a love-hate thing, but I love talking to them, and once we struggle through the problem, it's great. So I see exactly what they're talking about this morning. So we get the calls starting from Kentucky and working their way up. And typically it's really just supporting our dealers and getting our dryers started up and just helping them kind of refresh their memory, because we're in these every day and we're testing them at the end of the line. So it's fresh in our minds. So it's just talking them through startup problems. Things change from year to year when you start them up. New ones, it's really more just setup. So every site is different. So we'd like to help them get the dryers commissioned and going. Performance-wise, largely we've seen good performance out of the dryers with the assisting our dealers getting them set up correctly. So it's really been great working with them. The moistures, just as our 3 RSMs have been talking about, mostly in the low to mid 20s to get started, and things are actually drying fairly well. As far as major troubles, really, it's been a pretty typical year for that. So, today we're up in Baraboo commissioning a dryer with Bill, and again, that's a nice hand in hand with the customer, and we're working with Schultz Interstate Ag on that one. So that's a good example of the partnership that Mathews has with their dealer network. So, which is great. So, I guess aside from that, I think the harvest is in kind of the final push. It's the beginning of the big push, but things are really progressing fairly well overall, in my opinion.
Hey, that's great to hear, Kevin. I've got one question. With the calls you take, and I know sometimes the dealers have already filtered through the low-hanging fruit, but is there one piece of advice you could give to guys as they get started in 2020 harvest regarding their dryer that might help head off some calls or some frustrations? Any advice there?
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up. I am a big fan of pre-season maintenance. So please start your dryer early and start it before you fill it. Let's run. I would love to talk to you and help you just go through and let's just do a functional test on it and fire the burners and let's get all the kinks out of it before we fill it. So yes, feel free to pick up the phone and call us and let us help you work it through. And that way when the time comes to bring in the harvest and start running, it's an easier day.
That's great advice, Kevin. And for all of those that are subscribed to our channel, you may have seen a walkthrough with Dave Grill. It was actually our last Shop Talk Live talking about a pre-season checkup. So if you're looking for details on what exactly you should do, take a look at our channel and just go back to the last Shop Talk Live and you'll see a complete walkthrough. So I want to thank the guys on the phone for the updates. I want to wish our audience a safe, happy, profitable harvest, and everybody join us in 2 weeks when we'll do a subsequent follow-up and see where we're at on harvest in mid-October. But have a great day. We'll talk to you on the next Shop Talk Live.